Most people do not realize how much control they give away every single day, not through money, not through possessions, but through the desperate need to be accepted. They change their opinions to avoid criticism. They explain themselves to people who have already judged them. They chase validation from people who were never responsible for defining their worth. And slowly, they begin living for reactions instead of principles. Because when you need someone's approval, you give them the ability to influence your emotions. Their praise can lift you. Their rejection can break you. Their silence can make you question yourself. But there comes a moment when everything changes. A moment when you stop asking, "Do they accept me?" and start asking, "Do I respect the person I am becoming?" That is the moment people lose power over you. Not because you become cold, not because you stop caring, but because you finally understand something most people spend their lives searching for. Your value was never something another person had the authority to give you. In this video, you will discover why seeking approval keeps you trapped, why letting go of validation changes the way people see you, and how to build the inner confidence that remains steady even when the world disagrees with you. Let's begin. The desire to be accepted is natural. Every human being wants to feel seen. Every person wants to feel valued. But the problem begins when acceptance becomes the foundation of your identity. When you start believing, if they like me, I matter. If they choose me, I am enough. If they approve of me, I am on the right path. This is where your freedom begins to disappear, because the moment your confidence depends on outside opinions, your peace is no longer fully yours. Someone can criticize you, and suddenly you doubt yourself. Someone can ignore you, and suddenly you wonder what you did wrong. Someone can disagree with your choices, and suddenly you feel the need to defend your entire existence. Not because their opinion is powerful, but because you allowed it to become powerful. The Stoics understood this struggle thousands of years ago. They recognized that a person who cannot control their own mind will always be controlled by external things, other people's opinions, other people's reactions, other people's approval. These things are constantly changing, and building your identity around something unstable creates an unstable life. This is why many people spend years performing instead of living. They say what they think others want to hear. They hide parts of themselves to avoid judgment. They sacrifice their own needs just to maintain acceptance. But eventually, they discover a painful truth. The more you chase approval, the more you move away from yourself. And the moment you stop needing everyone to validate you, you begin taking your power back. There is a version of you that some people become comfortable with. The version that always explains. The version that always tries to keep the peace. The version that feels responsible for making everyone understand, approve, and accept you. They become familiar with this version of you. They know if they question your decisions, you will defend yourself. They know if they criticize you, you will try to prove your intentions. They know if they pull away, you will start searching for answers. And without realizing it, you teach people something. Your emotional state depends on their response. But the moment you stop living this way, the entire dynamic changes. Not because you become arrogant, not because you stop listening, but because you stop giving other people the authority to decide how you feel about yourself. You begin understanding that every opinion does not deserve a reaction. Every criticism does not require an explanation. Every misunderstanding does not need to become a battle you must win. This is where true confidence begins. Confidence is not walking into a room and believing everyone should admire you. Confidence is walking into a room knowing you are still valuable even if nobody notices you. A person who seeks approval constantly asks, "How do I make them accept me?" But a person with self-command asks, "Am I being true to myself?" That single shift changes everything, because now you are no longer controlled by the fear of rejection. You are guided by your own principles. The Stoics understood that your character belongs to you. People can judge your actions. They can misunderstand your choices. They can create their own opinions about you, but they cannot define you unless you surrender that power. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the opinions of others are temporary, but the person you choose to become is your responsibility. And that is the difference between approval and self-respect. Approval asks, "Will they accept me?" Self-respect asks, "Will I abandon myself just to be accepted?" When you choose self-respect, something powerful happens. You stop chasing people who make you prove your worth. You stop begging to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop changing yourself to fit places where you were never meant to shrink. Because you finally realize the goal is not to be accepted by everyone. The goal is to become someone you respect. One of the most exhausting ways to live is constantly trying to convince people that you are enough. You explain your intentions. You defend your choices. You try to make people understand your heart. You keep offering more words, more effort, more evidence, hoping that eventually they will finally see your value. But there is a problem with this. The moment you place yourself in the position of proving your worth, you have already accepted the idea that someone else has the authority to judge it. And that is where many people lose themselves. They start living as if their value is a debate. They think, maybe if I explain better, they will respect me. Maybe if I try harder, they will choose me. Maybe if I become different, they will finally accept me. But the truth is, the right people do not need you to constantly prove why you deserve basic respect. Someone who genuinely wants to understand you will listen. Someone who values you will consider your feelings. Someone who respects you will not require you to destroy your peace just to convince them that you matter. The wrong people create a different experience. They make you explain the same pain repeatedly. They turn your boundaries into a discussion. They make you defend why you deserve what should have been given naturally. And slowly you begin spending your energy trying to win a place in someone's mind instead of building a place of peace within yourself. The Stoics understood that your character is not created by applause. A person with discipline does not become disciplined because people notice. A person with integrity does not become honorable because people approve. They live according to their values, whether the world recognizes it or not. This is the difference between seeking approval and having self-respect. Approval says, "I need you to see my value before I can believe in myself." Self-respect says, "I know who I am, and your opinion does not change that." This does not mean you ignore advice. Wisdom requires humility. Growth requires learning. But there is a difference between listening to someone and handing them control over your identity. One makes you stronger. The other makes you dependent. So the next time you feel the urge to prove yourself, pause and ask, am I communicating because it matters? Or am I explaining because I need their acceptance? That question reveals where your power is going. Because the moment you stop turning your worth into a debate, you stop giving other people the ability to decide your value. Most people do not realize the price they pay for constantly trying to be accepted. At first, it feels harmless. You just want people to understand you. You just want to avoid conflict. You just want to maintain good relationships. But slowly something changes. You begin making decisions based on reactions instead of principles. You start choosing what keeps people comfortable instead of what keeps you aligned. You stay silent when you should speak because you fear judgment. You say yes when you want to say no because you fear disappointing someone. You ignore your own feelings because you are afraid someone might see you differently. And over time, you become a version of yourself built around being accepted. But here's the problem. A life built around approval is a life where you are constantly performing, because people's expectations are never fixed. One person wants you to be more available. Another wants you to be more successful. Someone else wants you to act differently, think differently, or live differently. And if your identity depends on satisfying every opinion, you will spend your entire life chasing a standard that keeps moving. The Stoics understood this danger. They believed a person should be guided by wisdom and virtue, not by the changing reactions of the crowd. Because people can praise you today and criticize you tomorrow. They can admire your confidence until your confidence no longer benefits them. They can appreciate your kindness until your boundaries make them uncomfortable. This is why approval is dangerous when it becomes your foundation, because the same thing that gives you confidence can also take it away. But when you build your identity from within, something changes. You stop needing constant reassurance. You stop looking for permission to make choices. You stop allowing every opinion to disturb your inner peace. You begin understanding that being misunderstood is sometimes the cost of being authentic. Not everyone will understand your growth. Not everyone will support your boundaries. Not everyone will accept the person you are becoming, and that is okay, because becoming yourself was never supposed to require everyone's permission. A person who trusts themselves is difficult to control. They can receive criticism without collapsing. They can hear disagreement without losing direction. They can stand alone without feeling incomplete, because their confidence no longer comes from being approved by others. It comes from knowing they are living according to their own values. And that is when people lose the ability to control you, not because you defeated them, but because you stopped needing them to confirm who you are. One of the biggest signs of personal growth is when people can no longer easily disturb your inner state, because many people do not control others through force. They control them through reactions. They know which words create doubt. They know which actions create insecurity. They know which moments will make you question yourself. And when you constantly seek approval, you become easier to influence. A simple criticism can ruin your confidence. A lack of attention can make you chase. A disagreement can make you abandon your own perspective just to restore peace. But when you stop depending on approval, something changes. People can still have opinions about you, but their opinions no longer have ownership over you. You begin to understand that not every comment deserves a response. Not every misunderstanding requires an explanation. Not every rejection requires you to prove why you should have been chosen. This is what self-command looks like. It is not becoming emotionless. It is not pretending nothing affects you. A Stoic is not someone who feels nothing. A Stoic is someone who feels deeply but chooses wisely. The emotion appears, but it does not control the decision. The criticism is heard, but it does not become your identity. The rejection hurts, but it does not determine your worth, because you finally separate two things: what people say about you and what you know about yourself. Those two things are not the same. Someone can misunderstand your intentions, and you can still know your heart. Someone can dislike your boundaries, and you can still know they are necessary. Someone can reject you, and you can still know you are valuable. This is the freedom that comes from within. The person who needs approval is always waiting for the world to tell them who they are. But the person with self-respect already knows. They do not need constant confirmation. They do not need to win every argument. They do not need to convince everyone. They simply continue becoming the person they choose to be. Marcus Aurelius understood this when he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Other people's opinions are outside events. Their praise is outside events. Their judgment is outside events. But your response belongs to you. And when you take responsibility for that, people lose the ability to control your emotions, because they can no longer give you confidence, and they can no longer take it away. One of the hardest truths to accept is this: you do not need everyone to choose you in order to have value. But many people spend years trying to prove that they are worth choosing. They chase attention. They chase recognition. They chase the moment when someone finally says, "I see you, I appreciate you, you matter." And while that desire is human, it can become a trap, because when you depend on someone else choosing you, you start fearing the moment they might stop. You begin protecting the approval instead of protecting yourself. You start thinking, what if they change their mind? What if I disappoint them? What if I am no longer enough? And now the thing that was supposed to make you feel secure becomes the thing controlling your peace. This is why the Stoics focus so much on inner stability. They understood that anything outside your control should never become the foundation of your happiness. People's opinions change. People's feelings change. People's priorities change. But your character is something you build and carry with you. A person who has learned self-command does not need to be chosen by everyone. They appreciate connection, but they do not beg for acceptance. They value love, but they do not destroy themselves trying to keep it. They welcome respect, but they do not chase it from people who refuse to give it, because they understand something powerful. Being wanted feels good, but being whole without being wanted is freedom. And when you stop needing everyone to choose you, you stop forcing yourself into places where you have to shrink. You stop convincing people to see your worth. You stop chasing those who only recognize your value when you are useful to them. You stop changing your personality just to remain comfortable in someone else's world. Instead, you begin choosing yourself. You choose peace over approval. You choose honesty over pretending. You choose growth over acceptance. And that is when people lose power over you. Because the person who no longer needs to be chosen cannot be controlled by the fear of being left. They may appreciate your presence. They may value your contribution. They may respect your journey, but they no longer hold the key to your confidence. You took that key back. There is one final trap that keeps many people connected to approval. They stop chasing. They stop explaining. They stop trying to convince everyone. But secretly, they are still waiting for someone to notice, waiting for someone to ask, "Why are you different now?" Waiting for someone to finally realize, "I should have valued them more." And this is where many people mistake silence for freedom, because you can stop seeking approval on the outside while still depending on it internally. You can walk away but still check if they noticed. You can become quiet but still hope someone regrets losing access to you. You can stop asking for validation but still secretly wait for someone to give it. And the Stoics understood this deeper battle. True freedom is not only controlling what people see, it is controlling what still controls you inside. Because if your peace depends on someone realizing your worth, then they still have influence over you. Your freedom cannot come from their apology. Your confidence cannot come from their regret. Your healing cannot depend on the moment they finally understand what they lost, because that still puts your power in their hands. The strongest shift happens when you can say, "Maybe they will understand me. Maybe they will not. Maybe they will appreciate me. Maybe they will not. But my peace is no longer waiting for their reaction." That is self-command. You stop trying to create a moment where someone finally sees your value. You start living as someone who already knows it. You stop making your growth a message for someone else. You make it a commitment to yourself. Because real confidence is not, "I hope they realize what they lost." Real confidence is, "I know what I have, and I will protect it." The person who still needs to be noticed is still connected to the approval they claim they no longer need. But the person who is truly let go does not need an audience for their transformation. They simply continue. They rebuild. They grow. They move forward. And that is when your silence becomes powerful. Not because it makes people wonder, not because it makes people regret, but because it is no longer a performance. It is peace. The final stage of freedom is not just removing your need for approval. It is replacing it with something stronger, self-trust. Because when you stop looking outside yourself for confirmation, you create space to build something deeper. You begin asking better questions. Not, "Will they like this?" But, "Is this aligned with who I want to become?" Not, "Will they approve of my decision?" But, "Does this decision respect my values?" Not, "How do I make everyone understand me?" But, "Am I living with honesty and discipline?" This is the mindset shift that separates people who are controlled by opinions from people who are guided by purpose. Because a person without self-trust will always search for permission. Permission to speak. Permission to change. Permission to leave. Permission to become someone different. But a person with self-command does not wait for permission to grow. They understand that not everyone will support their transformation. Some people only like the version of you that was easier to influence. Some people only appreciate the version of you that always said yes. Some people become uncomfortable when you develop boundaries they can no longer cross. And that is not a sign that you are becoming worse. Sometimes it is proof that you are becoming stronger. The Stoics believed that the quality of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts and actions, not the approval you receive from others. Because applause is temporary. Opinions are temporary. Attention is temporary. But the person you become through discipline and self-respect stays with you. So build a life that does not collapse when someone disagrees. Build confidence that does not disappear when someone criticizes you. Build peace that does not depend on everyone treating you perfectly. Because the ultimate goal is not to become someone everyone approves of. The goal is to become someone you no longer need to escape from when you are alone. And when you reach that point, something changes. People may still judge you. They may still misunderstand you. They may still question your choices, but they no longer control your direction, because you are no longer searching for yourself in the opinions of others. You have finally found yourself within. At the deepest level, stopping the need for approval is not about proving that you do not care. It is not about becoming distant. It is not about acting like you need nobody. That is not strength. That is another form of insecurity disguised as confidence. Real strength is quieter. It is being able to care about people without being controlled by their opinions. It is being able to accept love without becoming dependent on it. It is being able to hear criticism without allowing it to destroy your identity. The person who has mastered themselves does not need to announce their confidence. They demonstrate it through their actions. They no longer argue with everyone who misunderstands them. They no longer chase people who choose to walk away. They no longer sacrifice their peace just to maintain a certain image. Because they understand something important. You cannot control how people see you, but you can control whether you betray yourself trying to change their view. Many people spend their lives trying to win approval from people who are not even paying attention. They edit themselves. They hide their truth. They delay their growth, all because they fear the discomfort of being judged. But there is a greater pain than being judged by others. It is reaching the end of your life and realizing you spent it, performing instead of becoming. The Stoic path is not about escaping the world. It is about standing firmly within yourself while moving through it. You can receive praise without becoming addicted to it. You can experience rejection without being destroyed by it. You can be loved without forgetting who you are, because your identity is no longer built on what people give you. It is built on what you consistently choose. Your discipline, your principles, your character, your response. And once you understand that, something changes. You stop asking, how do I make everyone accept me? And you start asking, how do I become someone I can respect? That question changes the direction of your entire life, because the person who respects themselves does not need to chase validation. Everywhere they go, they carry their own approval with them. And that is why people lose power over you when you stop seeking it. Not because you become impossible to hurt, but because you become impossible to control. There is a moment when everything becomes clear. You realize you were never truly chasing approval. You were chasing the feeling of finally being enough. You wanted people to recognize your effort. You wanted them to understand your intentions. You wanted them to see the value you already carried. But somewhere along the way, you forgot something important. Their recognition was never the source of your worth. It was only their opinion of something that already existed. Your value did not begin when someone praised you. Your strength did not appear when someone believed in you. Your identity was not created by the people who accepted you. So why allow the same people to destroy your confidence when they withdraw that acceptance? A person who gives others the power to define them will always live in fear of losing that definition. They will constantly adjust, constantly prove, constantly seek reassurance that they are still enough. But the person who learns self-command becomes different. They stop asking the world for permission to exist. They stop begging to be understood by everyone. They stop measuring their life by how many people approve of their choices. Instead, they measure themselves by something deeper. Did I act with integrity? Did I remain true to my values? Did I respect myself even when nobody was watching? That is where real confidence comes from. Not from being admired, not from being chosen, not from being accepted by everyone. Confidence comes from knowing that you can stand with yourself even when others do not. Because life will always bring moments where people misunderstand you. They may question your decisions. They may criticize your growth. They may dislike the boundaries you create. But if you have built your foundation within, their opinions cannot shake you. They can have their perspective. You can have your peace. And those two things can exist at the same time. The goal was never to become someone who needs nobody. The goal was to become someone who does not abandon themselves just to keep somebody else. That is the final shift. You stop chasing approval. You stop performing for acceptance. You stop handing your confidence to people who cannot protect it. And you finally understand the person who controls your self-worth is not the person who praises you. It is the person you become when nobody is praising you. There is a powerful shift that happens when you stop seeking approval. You stop living from fear. Fear of being rejected. Fear of disappointing people. Fear of not being accepted. And you start living from a place of intention. You begin making choices because they are right for you, not because they create the best reaction from others. You stop asking, how will they respond? And you start asking, is this the person I want to become? That question changes everything, because many people spend their lives protecting relationships while neglecting the relationship they have with themselves. They keep giving chances they no longer want to give. They keep explaining things they should no longer have to explain. They keep staying in places where their peace disappears, all because they fear losing someone's approval. But there comes a point where you realize keeping everyone comfortable while losing yourself is not kindness. It is self-abandonment. The Stoics understood that your first responsibility is not to control the world around you. It is to govern yourself, your thoughts, your actions, your reactions, your choices. Because a person who cannot stand with themselves will always search for someone else to stand for them. But a person who trusts themselves becomes steady. They can walk away without hatred. They can set boundaries without guilt. They can say no without needing to explain for hours. They can accept that not everyone will understand their path, and that acceptance creates peace, because once you stop trying to control how people see you, you gain the energy to build who you are. You stop performing. You start creating. You stop chasing validation. You start developing character. You stop asking the world, "Am I enough?" And you begin answering, "I am responsible for becoming better, not for convincing everyone to notice." That is the difference between needing approval and having self-respect. Approval makes you dependent on the outside world. Self-respect anchors you within yourself. And when you become anchored, people may still have opinions about you, but those opinions no longer decide your direction. Freedom from approval is not created by one powerful moment. It is built through small decisions you make every day. Every time you choose honesty over pretending, you become stronger. Every time you choose your values over people's expectations, you become more grounded. Every time you resist the urge to explain yourself to someone who has already decided what they believe, you take your power back, because the need for approval does not disappear overnight. It appears in small moments, when you hesitate before sharing your opinion, when you feel guilty for setting a boundary, when you change your behavior because you are worried about how someone might react. These moments reveal where you are still searching for permission, and awareness is where change begins. The Stoics believe that you cannot always control your first emotion. You cannot control the sudden fear of rejection. You cannot control the desire to be accepted, but you can control what you do next. You can pause. You can reflect. You can choose your response instead of being controlled by the impulse. Before you seek someone's approval, ask yourself, would I still choose this if nobody praised me? Would I still believe this if nobody agreed with me? Am I acting from confidence or am I acting from fear? Those questions create separation between you and the need for validation. And in that space you discover something important. You were never looking for approval. You were looking for permission to trust yourself. Another powerful practice is learning that disappointing people is not the same as doing something wrong. Some people will be uncomfortable when you change. Some people will dislike your boundaries. Some people will miss the version of you that was easier to influence. But their discomfort does not mean you are wrong. Sometimes people are not upset because you change for the worse. Sometimes they are upset because they no longer have the same access to you. Growth requires letting go of the need to be understood by everyone, because your life is not a performance designed for an audience. It is a journey designed for becoming. And when you stop asking the world for permission to become yourself, you finally start living freely. The greatest level of confidence is not when everyone respects you. It is when you no longer need everyone to, because as long as your peace depends on being accepted, you are still giving other people control over your inner world. You are allowing their approval to decide when you feel confident. You are allowing their rejection to decide when you feel insecure. You are allowing their opinions to become the voice you listen to more than your own. But the moment you take that power back, everything changes. You stop seeing disagreement as a threat. You stop seeing rejection as proof that something is wrong with you. You stop seeing someone's inability to understand you as a reason to question yourself. You begin to understand that people see you through their own experiences, beliefs, fears, and expectations. Their perception is not always reality, and their judgment is not your identity. The Stoics understood that a person who is controlled by external opinions will always be unstable, because the outside world is constantly changing. People change, situations change, opinions change. But the person who builds their foundation on discipline, wisdom, and character becomes steady. They are not moved by every compliment. They are not destroyed by every criticism. They remain centered. This is the person who cannot easily be manipulated, because manipulation requires access to your insecurity. It requires knowing what you fear losing. It requires knowing what approval you are still chasing. But when you no longer need to be accepted by everyone, those weaknesses become strengths. You can walk away without needing the last word. You can forgive without returning to the same pattern. You can care about someone without allowing them to control your peace. That is the balance the Stoics practiced. Not becoming emotionless, becoming disciplined. Not removing yourself from people, removing your dependence on their reactions. Because the ultimate freedom is not having everyone understand you. The ultimate freedom is knowing you will be okay even when they do not. And when you reach that point, people may still have opinions. They may still judge. They may still disagree. But they no longer hold the power to decide who you are. Because you finally understand your worth was never waiting for their approval. It was waiting for you to recognize it. At the end of this journey, the goal is not to make everyone like you. It is not to convince everyone you are right. It is not to make people finally recognize what they failed to appreciate. Because if your peace still depends on their reaction, then they still have a place in your mind. And that is the final attachment approval creates. You can leave a situation physically, but still remain emotionally connected to the opinions of the people you left behind. You can stop asking for validation, but still secretly hope someone notices your absence. You can become silent, but still wait for someone to ask why you changed. But true freedom begins when you stop needing a response. You stop needing the apology. You stop needing the recognition. You stop needing the moment where someone finally says, "You were right. I should have valued you." Because your healing cannot depend on someone else's awareness. Your growth cannot depend on someone else's regret. Your worth cannot depend on someone else's ability to see it. The Stoic understands that the only thing truly belonging to you is your own mind, your choices, your actions, your character, your response. Everything else is temporary. People's opinions can change. Their feelings can change. Their understanding of you can change, but your commitment to yourself can remain. That is where your power comes from. When you stop trying to control how people see you, you become free to focus on who you are becoming. You start building instead of proving. You start improving instead of performing. You start living instead of constantly defending your existence. And that is when people truly lose power over you. Not because you defeated them, not because you made them regret losing you, but because you no longer need them to feel complete. The strongest person is not the person who gets approval everywhere they go. The strongest person is the one who can walk through rejection, criticism, and misunderstanding, and still remain loyal to themselves. Because when your peace comes from within, nobody can take it from you. The world will always have opinions. Some people will support you. Some people will question you. Some people will misunderstand you no matter how clearly you explain yourself. But the difference is this: you no longer have to let their reactions decide your reality. Because the moment you stop seeking approval, you stop living as a prisoner of other people's expectations. You stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. You stop changing your values to avoid rejection. You stop chasing acceptance from people who require you to become someone you are not. And instead, you return to yourself. You return to your principles. You return to your purpose. You return to the person you were before you started measuring your worth through the eyes of others. Remember, you can appreciate someone's opinion without being controlled by it. You can accept advice without surrendering your identity. You can love people deeply without making them responsible for your confidence. That is true emotional strength. Not needing nobody, not caring about nobody, but knowing that your relationship with yourself is the foundation everything else is built on. Because people will come and go. Opinions will change. Approval will rise and fall. But the person you become through discipline, self-respect, and inner peace stays with you. So the next time you feel the urge to prove yourself, pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this because it represents who I am? Or, am I doing this because I need someone else to accept me? That question can change your life, because every time you choose yourself over approval, you take your power back. Every time you protect your peace over someone's opinion, you become stronger. Every time you stand by your values, even when nobody applauds, you become free. If this message helped you see approval differently, take a moment to like this video, because it helps more people discover this mindset. Share it with someone who needs the reminder that their worth does not depend on anyone else's opinion. And subscribe for more lessons on discipline, self-mastery, and the Stoic mindset. Because the person who controls their own mind cannot be controlled by the world.